they maximize their potential and are productive, responsible citizens. That being said, I'd like to move on to the first item of business, which would be the visitors' communication and recognitions. I have not gotten any requests to speak to the board. I'm here by myself. So we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Mrs. Ferrara.
Thank you, Mrs. Bloom. I have several items for you tonight for approval. The first item are the minutes from the regular meeting of April 27th, the 5-year forecast, the amended appropriations, estimated revenues, and the financial report for April. I'm just going to give you a quick summary of how April ended. For total month for the receipts for April were $3,255,890. Total expenditures were at $5,040,906. Total expenditures to date are at $54,027,122, and expenditures were at $48,017,145. So that was a report for April. Also this month, by revised code, I have to present the 5-year forecast for the next 5 years. This was probably one of the more complicated 5-year forecasts that we had to do in light of the fact that with the numbers kept changing last week with all the information that was coming out. So just to let you know, at this point in time, Brandon and I reviewed the 5-year forecast, and we decided that based on the information that we received, we actually had to amend our revenues and our expenditures this year because of the change in the amounts that we are going to be receiving. As you know, that Governor DeWine announced last week that over $300 million had to be cut from this fiscal year's budget in order for them to be in balance. So he gave that order to the High Department of Education to reduce funding for school districts across the state. And at this point in time, our projection is that we will be reduced $874,000. That amount will be started to be deducted with our second payment in May, and then our 2 payments in June will also have a proportion of that $874,000 in it. Now, for the next 4 years, the projection at this point in time, I actually did reduce it by about over $2 million, because at this point in time, just the information that's coming out of the state, unfortunately, they can't give us a specific number, but in general, what they were telling us, that in fact that at this point in time, by the end of June of this fiscal year, that there's potential that the state of Ohio could be at $5.4 billion in the hole compared to what they thought they were going to be, which is double the amount of the rainy day fund. So we know that we probably will get reductions next year. We are not quite sure how much that will be. I extrapolated the fact that the percentage that we will reduce this time happened to be about 3.7% of our state revenue. So extrapolating that over the next year, I estimated that to be about 10%. So you will see with forecast that I gave you that there was over $2 million cut in reductions in state funding. I also, the tax revenue that was coming in, I also reduced next year's amount by $400,000. Again, that isn't an estimate because at this point in time, we have no idea what those amounts will be. I did review back the reductions back in with the crash that happened in 2008, and there was almost a $900,000 less of property tax money that came in at that point in time. Since we were only projecting for half of the year for next year, at that point in time, I only reduced it by $400,000. You can see just only, but by far $400,000. And then we will be able to see come next year with the August, with the money that's supposed to come in with this second half for this calendar year, and then the first part of the calendar year for next year in January, we can see where the property tax money is coming, so then we can actually project that out better next year. As far as the expenditures, a lot of our expenditures, especially with salaries are actually set because of our negotiated agreements. So those are pretty much actually, we maintain those at this point in time. At this point in time, our insurance benefits we don't know how that's the current pandemic is going to affect our insurance rate. We know that probably there will be some changes in our rate because of where the pandemic issue has come. So at this point in time, we've got that built into our forecast. We know that some of our reductions for this year is because we have not had students in, so therefore our some of that reduction we had this year in our expenditures was because of we didn't have the fuel costs for our school buses and actually copying costs for paper. So we were actually able to reduce a little bit of our expenditures for this year. So one of my final statements in my assumptions for my 5-year forecast is, unfortunately, at this time, this was our best estimate. We vetted all these numbers as best we could. Numbers keep changing every day. We will know, hopefully, maybe sometime in July after the fiscal year end as to where the state is to maybe stabilize the 5-year forecast. But like with everything that changes, this 5-year forecast will definitely change. So what I'm presenting to you tonight is our best guess as of today. We will see what tomorrow will bring. So just to let you know, it is subject to change. The amended appropriations and estimated revenues that is also on the agenda for you to approve are just changes to reflect the amounts of revenue that on the 5-year forecast for our revenue and our expenditures. So that is what I have for you tonight.
And the 5-year forecast, refresh my memory, it includes renewals or no?
It does not include renewals. By revised code, I cannot include those. They are, which is at the top where all the revenue is accounted for. Now, what the Auditor State's Office requires then is actually for us to actually put those on the bottom as if those would actually pass. So those are reflected on the bottom, but it's not reflected in the total revenues.
At the top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mrs. Ferraro? This evening, under the Treasurer's agenda, we're asked to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 27th, 2020. We're asked to approve the 5-year forecast fiscal year 2020. We're asked to approve the amended appropriations for fiscal year 2020. We're asked to approve the estimated revenues for fiscal year 2020. And finally, asked to approve the financial report for April 2020. Does anyone require separation? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Go ahead, Jane.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Mrs. Ferraro, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Woody,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Dr. Espelita,
Yes.
Mr. Poulos,
Yes.
Mr. Underwood.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the personnel agenda, section A. Does anyone require separation? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? Mrs. Ferraro, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Espelita,
Yes.
Mr. Poulos,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Woody.
Yes.
Thank you. There is no section B this evening, so we'll move on to the consent agenda, where we are asked to approve the high school student handbook for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Mrs. Ferraro, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Woody,
Yes.
Mr. Poulos,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Dr. Espelita,
Yes.
Mr. Underwood.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to board reports. Does anyone have anything to share this evening?
I would like to share some things about the role of recognition, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, so as you all know, May 17th, the reception for the Roll of Recognition inductees this year will not be happening. And I have drafted a letter after speaking to the committee. And I also want to thank Jenny Wood for sharing some of her thoughts, which gave me some more ideas about this, what I'm about to share with you. So a letter has been drafted sharing with the past inductees, all those that were invited to the May 17th reception, and also those three folks that were going to be inducted this year. The plan going forward is to have a dinner hors d'oeuvre reception type of thing on June 27th, which is a Saturday, at our Northmont auditorium. This is all tentative, by the way. So if June 27th, we are still not allowed to gather in a large group, August 1st is the next day. And if at that time, August 1st rolls around and we still are not allowed to gather in larger groups, then we're going to postpone any type of recognition for this year to next year's graduation. It was suggested that we have a dinner type reception the day before graduation in the auditorium foyer area there, and recognizing this year's inductees as well as three that we would select for 2021. We will have hopefully the unveiling of their plaques, have them on the wall or whatever, unveil them in that reception. And then at graduation 2021, we would just mention their names. There would be no elaborate or bio type of thing shared at graduation, so we would not take away from the seniors at that point. So I've asked the folks in this letter to let me know via email numbers if they were to attend for any of those dates. And so hopefully capturing their emails, I'll be able to let them know of any changes that may arise from all of this. So that's the plan going forward, I hope.
Okay.
It sounds like a plan, Jane.
Yep.
Thank you. I did share in the letter that our hopes are that we can get something done this year for those folks. And, keeping in mind, we have to keep in mind the folks that would be coming. Some of them are elderly, and we want to make sure they're safe and all those things. So I really appreciate Tony and Linda's input on this as well. So hopefully the letter will go out. I asked Joanne, the Northmont Education Foundation trustees are having a meeting this coming Wednesday. I've asked her to attach this letter to the agenda that I hope went out today. And then I've asked that the trustees respond to her via email before the meeting so she can get this in the mail before the weekend.
Just a FYI on that note.
Yes.
She did send the email out.
Okay.
And there was a question about relative to the cost, and I think after that was answered, there was some kind of like email voting taking place, if you will.
Okay.
So it might be it might be able to go out even before the meeting, the actual physical Zoom meeting, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that input.
Yeah.
Thank you all. That's all I have.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Any board member have anything to report?
I don't have a whole lot to report. Just the end of the fourth quarter. So with that, we're trying to do the book pickup and drop off using social distancing. So I went through today as kind of like a drive-through, and that'll be continuing all this week. Then also, we actually have something in sports. Since our last board meeting, we've had 2 athletes commit to the University of Michigan for football. So that's where Marcus Allen and Rod Moore will be going. So be sure to congratulate them if you see them.
That's great.
That is great.
Awesome. That is tremendous.
Even though I don't like Michigan, I think it's awesome.
Well, with that same vein, I tried to make sure everybody saw the YouTube, which I thought was an outstanding way that we showcased our students, our senior students, and where they were going to in universities they were attending. And I was just amazed at not only the items that they were going to school for, but the different universities in which they are going to be attending. I just saw you there, Isaiah. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great video, and the variety of universities that we're having students attend. Wow. across the country,
Yeah.
to some very, very prestigious schools and schools that are well known for specific majors. Just really impressive. So a good video. There being no other board member reports, I'm going to ask Tony to give Mr. Thomas to give his report, please.
I would just like to start by wishing Mr. Underwood the best as a 2020 grad. You really represented your class well on this board, and you had some challenging things that we discussed this year, and you were mature beyond your years, and so we certainly appreciate that. We hope you enjoyed your Day of Honor last Friday. It's not quite the same when we're not in session, so I apologize for that on behalf of the coronavirus, I guess, but we wish we could have had you in school that day to recognize you. But I still hope that you feel that the love from this group, because we think the world of you, and we know you're going to do great at Tulane, and we wish you the best down there. So thank you so much for representing your class so well. Just to follow up a little bit on what Isaiah said, we now have 5 football players in the Big Ten, which is just incredible. We have Iowa, 3 at Michigan, and my neighbor and 2020 graduate, Jaden Cameron, early enrolled at Northwestern. And unfortunately for him, he's back home. But the good thing is he'll be able to walk with us this weekend. I know he would rather be in Northwestern, still working out with his team. But that's, again, the sign of the time. But congratulations to him, and we're glad that we'll be able to recognize him Saturday and Sunday as well. Some updates on what's going on. Remote learning obviously has been a big part of our strategic plan and what we do. And we have joined forces with not only this county, but the Central Ohio Education Service Centers to continue to refine what we do. And Suzanne Lentz will represent Northmont on that consortium to make sure that we're prepared for anything that could come this fall, or even if we do start as normal and there's a spike and we go back to remote learning, we want to be as well positioned as we can. I'd like to thank Suzanne for her great leadership within the district, but then also to go out and just continue to refine what we're doing. It would be hard to have this report and not address to some extent the state budget cuts, even though Ms. Ferraro did a great job with that. Obviously, $874,000 in 2 months is a lot of money, and then 10% cut for next year is also very concerning. So we are looking at things very closely, and I know that just to kind of let you know what kind of people we have working on this, Brandon Cannett and Ann Ferraro were working on this 5-year forecast and came up with, okay, let's look at a 10% reduction in state funding for next year. And we had a webinar today, and the guidance was 10%. So that's they did that before they had that guidance. So that's just the quality of people we have working on this very difficult situation that we will try to weather the storm best as possible. I did see an OSBA today, I believe it was, that a former Northmont City Board member, Ross Bryan, passed away. I just wanted to share that with everyone. He was 96 years old, and he passed away in April, and saw that in OSBA, so I wanted to make sure we recognized Mr. Ross Bryan. Green Pride will be different this year. We won't have the assembly, but the principals are making sure that all the folks that we normally recognize are recognized as they're coming in to close out the school year. So we still are honoring folks, just in a different way. So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. We are always concerned about our making sure that our most marginalized students are safely fed, and so we will continue to have our food distribution. But once that ends, I did share with everyone that we did recertify everyone who's on free and reduced, and those families will receive on their debit card the ability to go to the grocery and still get food over the summer. And that's not typically the way that's done, but that was using federal stimulus money that came to the state of Ohio, and then the state is managing that. So it is some comfort to know that there is a safety net out there. I hope you all get to see the video that I shared last Friday of Bennett Stouter and Alex Hoyne, who were national champions in and their video was just outstanding. It's hard to believe those were sixth graders. They should be in college already. The way that the vocabulary they were using. But I would ask that the board consider recognizing these gentlemen sometime over the summer. Unfortunately, they were supposed to be recognized in Washington, D.C., and that was canceled. And I think the least we could do is maybe bring them in sometime this summer and recognize them.
You bet.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, they were using the jet engines, right?
Yes.
It was
Turbine.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Sixth graders. I'm a little intimidated.
A little.
You guys are already touched a little bit on the virtual recognitions that are going out. I can't thank our staff enough for all the time and effort they're putting in to make sure that we are recognizing students this spring, even though we're not together. Summer school, our initial registration is higher at this time than normal, and so maybe we learned something that maybe the remote learning is more attractive to folks during the summer, transportation, things like that. I don't know, but that's very good. And just so you know, this is for credit recovery, but it's also so that kids can take classes, open up their schedule to take higher level classes. And one of them is a calculus class to make sure that they can get to the very highest that we offer here at Northmont. And that one already had 15 kids in it. So it's a wide range of offerings, but it's to help all students, no matter what their situation is at this time. And then I just cannot be thankful enough to the high school administrative team and to the Board of Education for committing 12 hours this weekend to come in and recognize our 2020 graduating class. We'll roughly 6 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday, but the fact that everyone will still get a picture receiving their diploma. We're trying to make the background look just like it would pretty much if they were at the Nutter Center, just to try to bring some normalcy to this. And then I think the walk down Thunderbolt Way is something that even our in normal times, maybe those classes do not receive. That it could be really special, and so we hope that will help shed some light on how much we care and love this class. And we just thank the board for agreeing to be in Thunderbolt Way and congratulate the students as they take their final walk. And so it's exciting. It's going to be an exciting weekend for us.
Mr. Thomas, what time do you want the board members there?
So we should get a final schedule here in the next 48 hours. Just so you know, senior grades are due tomorrow, so we're still determining who for sure is walking that day and receiving diplomas. So that's why we still haven't released anything. But as a rough timeline, from noon to 6 both days, it could be refined a little bit once we get final numbers. Maybe my guess is we'll still start at noon both days, but we may be done a little sooner depending on how it all works out.
So do you want us there 11:30, 11:45?
I think 11:45 or so, and Mr. Bloom, they may talk to you about coming in early for the speech, but I'm not sure how they're going to do that yet. So.
Okay.
And Mr. Thomas, would you like us to enter the door in the parking lot area, the front door?
You can, or the other place you could come in is you guys will start as soon as they come out of the Thunderdome, and then kind of space yourself out. So you could even park and come in the athletic entrance if you would rather.
Oh, okay.
Either entrance would be fine.
Okay.
Well, so we are going to be in the Thunderdome, or going to be outside the Thunderdome?
Right
You'll be in
outside.
Thunderbolt Way, congratulating them as they make their final walk.
Okay. All right.
And we'll have some stools and things for you, because that's going to be a long day. So we'll have some water and so forth for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Thomas? Okay. Tony and Ann, both. Maybe, I don't know whether either one of you know the answer to this, but are we waiting for the governor to say something about meetings going on? Because I thought last Friday he said, or Thursday, he said something about the legislators meeting. So before we can come up with a plan of how we're going to ease back into our regular meeting schedule?
It's my understanding that the General Assembly is coming back, but they are, I think when they did their last vote, they came in one at a time, and so they're still not having a mass gathering. And so I have not received any further guidance that we should go back to public meetings yet. But as soon as we get that information, we'll share that. And the attorneys we have, they're keeping an eye on that. So
Okay.
it shouldn't fall through the cracks. If something changes, we should get notification.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any new business? Old business is always the conversation about money. And at our last meeting, we talked about the levy that is expiring that we need to do something with. And I know that we have we agreed that to do something. If we're going to put something on the ballot in November, it has to be done before our August meeting. So it means we have to do something in June and July. I would encourage everyone to talk about it, think about it. I can't imagine my own personal feeling is in these times, I cannot imagine, even though we might have to make cuts to what we do, I cannot imagine asking our public for new money when so many people might be out of work and their situations will have changed dramatically. So I think, Anne, do we not have to have something on the agenda in the June meeting about a resolution about what we're going to do moving forward?
Yes, ma'am. There's one resolution that we need to have approved, and then I will submit that to the county auditor. And at that point in time, they will let us know how much that renewal or replacement levy. And I'm assuming if by the conversations you're having right now, that would be a renewal, since that would be no increase in taxes. And that time they'll give us an estimate of how much that would bring in.
Okay, so we still have we do not have another board meeting in May.
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay, so any other board members have any thoughts? Should we have Anne do a renewal resolution for a renewal, or what are your thoughts here?
Well, first of all, make sure I understood everything everyone has said so far, and that is an $874,000 cut this year and 10% next year, which represents, in round figures, and correct me if I'm wrong, about $2.5 million. So the two of these together in the next year, this remaining year and next year, we're talking about like $3.3 million worth of cuts. So I don't think there's any question in the fact that we need to be on the ballot for a renewal. And being sensitive to our community, a renewal with continuing probably is not the right thing to do at this time. But a renewal, I don't think we have any choice. And the sooner the better.
I feel like we have to do something. For us to do nothing would then put us in a position or setting maybe a precedent and getting our history of passing them back on track, so to speak. And I think we have an opportunity now to share the fact that we're going with the renewal, keeping in mind all different scenarios and making sure that people, even though it's hard to make sure people understand what a renewal is, we can tout it that way. That we aren't wanting to increase any taxes.
Right. That we're being sensitive to.
Right. I couldn't think of the right word I wanted to say. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other thoughts?
If I'm in agreement with everybody.
So are we not discussing continuing, or we're taking that off the table?
Well, I was just going to bring that up, so I don't want to be the devil's advocate here, but
Go, Chris.
I'm going to. So I certainly think that it would be incredibly difficult to go for additional money. Even though we're going to be in the whole $874,000, and then just to Tom's point, another 10% on top of that for 2021. My first question to Ann, though, was there any additional commentary that the state gave you other than we're sorry we're taking $874,000 from you? Did they give you anything that would say there is simply no relief here, there's no additional relief, how are you supposed to get the money? Or is it we just have to cut our way there? Was there anything that they commented on?
At this point in time that we know that we're gonna the 874 is set. They're afraid at this point in time because of the way the state revenue is coming in or not coming in, that there's no way for them to make that up this year. So they're already bracing for the fact that the 874,000 is what's going to be the shortfall. Well, for us, for our portion, 300, and then maybe a $5.4 billion deficit at the end of this fiscal year. So they're telling us, get ready. It's the cuts are going to come. We just don't know to what extent. Some of the money that's.
So go ahead. I guess my question is, if everybody kind of. It did not paint a very good light on the state representatives in this last article I read, especially when they said we're going to cut X amount of dollars out of public education.
Well, they're going to say, my guess is they're going to say, we talked about 20% cut reduction in all of the areas, all the different areas of the legislature. And so look at what we're doing for education in moving forward. We're only cutting you 10%.
Well,
point though, I do think that we need to advocate that because this isn't this is something that happens a lot. Is those capital funds projects that Mr. Poulos is referring to can eat up a lot of the budget, and so in a time such as this, I mean, we have to advocate for the importance of education, and that some of those funds need to, if they went from 20% to 10%, that 10% came from someplace. We've got to keep advocating why it should not come from education.
Yeah, it's just from history that we've had from the state legislators. I mean, back in 2008 when the crisis happened then, we know that education got hurt a lot, and the fact that they keep emphasizing that this K through 12 represents almost 46% of the state budget in itself is a large portion of why we had such a large portion of those cuts, the $330 million that they're cutting from the state for us, for the education. We will be getting some CARES money that's coming from the federal government. We'll see how that, I mean, that's right now, that's one-time monies, going forward, we don't know what's going forward, where else money can come from.
Did they throw in the charter schools and the vouchers into that $330 million?
Well, that question was asked today. They're unsure how that's actually going to affect them. So, we will find out.
We should answer that question this way. Not all schools were treated the same. I mean, if you were on the, we're always on that. They consider us on the other side of the 50%. In other words, on the wealthy side, even though we just barely land there. Some of the what are considered less wealthy schools did not get impacted very much in this 2-month cut, especially when you figure in when you factor in the federal money that came through. So to say that all schools were treated the same is not true at all.
Well, one of the things that we haven't really addressed here that we kind of been looking at the 874 and the potential 10%, and that is roughly half of our money comes from the state, and the other half comes from local primarily real estate taxes. And due to the pandemic and loss of jobs and so on and so forth, there's going to obviously be less personal property tax money paid in. There's going to be a shortfall there. I mean, there's always normally a little bit of a shortfall, but don't we anticipate that there will also be a shortfall on that side as well? And can we even estimate what that might be?
That would be hard to estimate. That's where I put a $400,000 cut in next year's budget and fiscal 21's budget. I estimated 400,000 because it's just half of a year. Because the other half will end up in fiscal year 2022. So at that point in time, we will be able to see this coming August, September, when those tax monies are due, how our delinquencies are going to be. Are they going to increase? How much are they going to increase from prior years? And at that point in time, then we can then maybe project out to the next fiscal years.
So with that
found-
said, Ann, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, so with that said, I want to get back to my original thought, which is I understand going for the additional dollars to the community now would be very difficult, right? I mean, just like I think the state representatives are going to have a PR nightmare if they cut K through 12 like they're talking about and don't cut some of these pet projects that they've created. I think it's going to be a PR nightmare. But I also think on our side of it, I'm not sold that we should just kind of do it business as usual. I think a continuous. I have no problem asking for the community to do a continuous, so we don't have to go back to them in the future on this particular piece.
Well, I have two things to respond to. The first one is the in terms of our legislature. I think that it would be a good idea for us to communicate with our legislature strongly that we're taking a huge hit. We need to not be the ones taking the huge hit. And what about all these other projects? I think that it would be a good idea for us to reach out and maybe a couple of us actually sit down and talk with them. So when we're allowed to do that, because I don't know how well they Zoom or Google Meet either. But the other thing is that in terms of continuous, I don't know how I feel about it. I think that the numbers of people that really care whether it's continuous or not are small, but I haven't really given that a whole lot of thought. So I'm thinking we could probably ask Ann to prepare the resolutions, one for a 5-year and one for continuous, and then think about it, talk to your touch point people and see what their thoughts are. And that way we're prepared for the June meeting.
And do you know,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, and do you know how many of our levies here in the past few have we gone to continuous? How many are left that are not continuous? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, this will be the last one.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
So I would rather not go over the same bridge twice. That's just me. I'm only speaking for myself. I think to Linda's point, I'm not sure people really fully understand the continuous. And as long as we tell them it's no additional money, if in fact we're going to have these cuts like we're going to have in 2021, and if it happens in 2021, it's not like the state of Ohio is going to get back on their feet fiscally in 12 months. It may extend into 2022 and further. And so if we're going to ask for new money, I don't want to have to go over the old bridge that I just went over again long term. They go, well, they're going to hit me again. If it's continuous, then it's kind of off of our shelf, and we can just move on, knowing that money's going to be there.
Well, exactly. It gives us the ability to plan as best
Agreed.
as we can.
Agreed.
Because then it becomes part of that 5-year forecast. Because then those dollars become part of the 5-year forecast that they now cannot be a part of. It gives us the ability to plan. But with respect to, Tom's feelings, I think if it's an easy enough do for Ann to do both, and for us to finalize this part of the discussion at our next meeting before we vote on one or the other.
Ultimately, this is the board's decision, but my consistent recommendation has been to consider continuing for a couple of reasons. One, the 5-year forecast is just much more accurate. I think when you put a month like this, when you're approving a 5-year forecast, it excludes some money that in the past this community has supported, and then to not be able to show that, I think is misleading. So that's one reason. And then the other reason is it's the most fair thing to this community, because every time we run a levy, what do? We have to go to the business leaders in this community and ask for money to run a levy. And if we have to do that one last time because it's continuing instead of a 5-year, I think it's the most fair way to treat our community leaders who year in and year out support us. So my recommendation will be, again, to consider continuing, but obviously that is board decision.
Okay. Are we in agreement that we're going to ask Ann to, we don't have to vote on this, but just are there any negatives to that? Anyone thinking?
No, I think she should prepare both.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
will prepare both.
All right. Thank you. Any other old business? Okay. Well, there's no reason that I know of to go into executive session. Our next regular meeting will be at 6 p.m. on June 8th.
Yes.
And again, as far as we know right now, this is how we'll be doing our next meeting as well.
Wait, before we end,
Yes.
will we meet our new board rep then?
We did not include our new board rep in graduation like we usually do, just because of the differences and the numbers of people.
Right.
So, yes, hopefully we will meet our new board rep at that time.
June.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hopefully we'll be in person at that meeting. Socially distanced, but in person.
That's Cooper here barking, by the way. He'd be down here, but he's too old to come down the stairs.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you, Linda.
evening.
Take care,
Stay
everybody.
safe.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
I